Marshal of the Supreme Court, who's in charge of security, wrote letters to Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland and Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, asking them to enforce laws that they have on the books to stop protesters from gathering. The Marshal, Gail Curley, wrote to Hogan, "For weeks on end, large groups of protesters chanting slogans, using bullhorns and banging drums have picketed justices' homes in Maryland. But Governor Hogan's office has pointed out that the constitutionality of Maryland's law is in question by the state's Attorney General. And the chair of the Board of Supervisors in Fairfax County, Virginia, says their state's law likely violates the First Amendment." Both governors wrote to Attorney General Merrick Garland weeks ago asking him to enforce a federal law, remember, separate from the state laws, on the books since 1950. Now, that law says in part, whoever with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, or in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned. U.S. Marshal Service, as part of the DOJ, we've seen an increased presence around justices' homes, but it shouldn't come to this. Those in support of Roe protested in front of the Supreme Court building when the decision was announced. They have every right to have their voices be heard there. But here's one thing I do know. Continuing the protests at the justices' homes weeks after the decision is not going to change the decision. It's not going to change anything. The demonstrations could, however, endanger the justices' families and their neighbors. Now, the state laws very well may be unconstitutional, but the only way to find out would be to enforce them and let them be challenged in courts. In the meantime, the doxing of justices and judges in general is just downright dangerous. Protest at the court, protest at the Capitol, protest outside the White House, but it's time for these parades at their homes to end. Joining me now is Joe Schember, mayor of Erie, Pennsylvania. Mayor Schember had multiple threatening incidents at his home, including an attempted break-in, armed protesters parading past his house, as well as a note left on his car's windshield saying there were bombs at the courthouse. Mayor, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Dan. I appreciate it.
So you've unfortunately experienced firsthand some of the same issues facing the justices. What do you make of those who, on the one hand, say, let them protest, and on the other hand, are saying, get them out of there?
I would, I guess, agree with getting them out of there. We shouldn't. I don't think we should be at people's homes protesting something. We certainly can do it where they work, where there may be a meeting going on of some kind that you don't agree with, and I welcome that. I don't mind people approaching me ever, but I really have a problem with going to the home of someone, particularly with guns, parading past the home with guns as they did to us for about a month. This was back in 2020. And more recently, this year, in January, and Erie gets a lot of snow, but in January, two young fellows broke into the side door at our house. They set off the alarm and immediately left. But it was about 1:30 in the morning. The alarm, of course, woke us up. We went downstairs, found the open door, and it was a pretty scary experience. The police did great work following up on that. And then 6 days later, I got that note you mentioned on my car. It was also a snow day. I didn't see it till I started to clean the car off. And basically it said there was a bomb planted at the state courthouse in Erie. And I got my police immediately involved, and they went and checked it out, and there was nothing there. But that was within a week, two experiences that really moved me that this is not right.
Why were people so mad at you?
I don't know if they were mad at me personally. In fact, the two that broke in, I'm not even sure they knew whose house it was. When the police investigated this later, they found tracks leading up to just about every home in our neighborhood, the back windows. And
all right, what about the protest, though?
The protest, I had met with a lot of the people involved with that. I met with them at a general meeting outside, and then we had a couple of Zoom calls, and we talked about some great things. I later found out, though, that they were kind of making fun of me in the background as we were talking, and so I withdrew then from those meetings, and that's when the parading started. But the police put a car in front of our house for over a month to prevent anything from happening.
And there were people in your community, you're a Democrat, who were upset at you about the police response in Erie, Pennsylvania, regarding what had happened in 2020 with George Floyd?
It wasn't so much about the response to that, but we did have some protesting go on the Friday following George Floyd's death.
Right.
And they were breaking windows, breaking into places downtown, and the police handled it really well. But that was kind of the worst thing we had happen, and nothing else has happened since then, I'm happy to say.
But it was not a peaceful protest.
It was not a peaceful protest. There were about 17 police officers hurt. There was one person who wouldn't move, who was pushed over there by the police, hurt, but that's the only individual, not a police officer, that was hurt. And one of our police officers has never been able to come back because of the injuries he sustained. That's over 2 years ago.
And so when you see these protests going on outside the Supreme Court justices' homes, and again, it's not apples to apples, right? We don't know of many people, with arms, et cetera.
Yes.
This one guy was arrested. What do you think when you hear about these protests going on at their homes?
I really don't like to see that. I feel very badly for the Supreme Court justices and their families that they are having to put up with this. I am happy to see they have pretty good police protection at these homes, which I'm very happy to see. Of course, we didn't have that at the time our break-in happened.
Yeah. And look, I got to say, it is good to hear a Democratic mayor like yourself celebrating the police as often as you have during this interview. As you may know, I think very often that in the media, there's not enough of that that goes on, and it's good to hear.
I agree. One of the best things our police do, they formed a thing called the Police Athletic League. One of our African-American officers started it. Before he took office, they were in existence, but they only had about 10 officers participating and maybe about 50 kids. But I really supported it. Yeah. They now have over 70 officers involved, and we have about 800 children going to Erie Public Schools involved. I had a chance to experience that when Christmas time they go around. Are you okay?
5 seconds left. Sorry, Mayor. But
no
thank you.
problem.
We got the name out there. We got the name. Thank you. Appreciate it. Banfield starts right now.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.